Sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you have a remote office that has enough users that you'd like to have a domain controller locally present to assist with logging on and authentication, but you don't have any IT staff out in the location to help keep the server secure. Well, Microsoft has a solution for this situation, and it's called the read-only domain controller. Now, to demonstrate the installation of a read-only domain controller, I'm going to use DC3. I've already installed Active Directory onto DC1 and DC2. Those are both fully functional domain controllers for the landonhotel.local domain. And so we'll take DC3, which is currently nothing more than a standalone server, and we will promote it to a read-only domain controller. So here in the Server Manager on DC3, I will tell you that I've already gone through the Add Roles and Feature Wizard to add the Active Directory Domain Services role itself, because again, that process is exactly the same as you would have seen when looking at the installation of other domain controllers. And you can see down here that I already have the role, and my little warning box up in the notification area up here tells me that I need to go ahead and promote this server to a domain controller. So I'm going to click on that. This takes us back into the Active Directory Domain Services Configuration Wizard, where we want to choose to be an additional domain controller to an existing domain. The domain we're going to connect with is landonhotel.local. The credentials we will use are landonhotel/administrator. And I'll put in the password for the administrator account. Click OK. And next. And at this point, it does a quick check to make sure that my security credentials are okay. Everything went just fine. So now I get to choose what other type of capabilities I want to have. Now, I could be a DNS server. I could be a global catalog server. I'm going to actually choose not to be either of those. As far as footprint-wise, I want this to be a very small domain controller with limited security vulnerability issues, because it's going to be out in a branch office where we don't have good IT security in place. I am going to choose to make it a read-only domain controller, which means that the Active Directory database will be on this server, and the server can authenticate users. But if somebody was to get onto this server in the location, they wouldn't be able to make changes to anything because it's read-only. We only have the one site, so I'm going to take the default site. I have to still enter in a password for the Directory Services Restore mode, just as we've done in the past. And then I'll click on Next. Now here is where we have something that's a little bit different than what we would see when doing other installations. And the reason is because this is a read-only domain controller. So we can delegate a specific administrator account. So if there was a particular user that you were going to delegate as the administrator for this particular system, then you could add them here. And then here it says accounts that are allowed to replicate passwords to the read-only domain controller. And you'll see here there's a group actually called the Allowed RODC Password Replication Group. So what I would want to do is any users that were out in that branch office, I would make them a member of a group, and then I would make that group a member of the Allowed RODC Password Replication Group. Or I could actually add the remote office group in here directly. And the idea here is these are the only passwords that will be replicated out to this read-only domain controller out in the branch office, so that, again, if it was to become compromised, somebody wouldn't be able to hack in and grab hold of all the passwords through the entire enterprise. And in fact, you'll see that there are accounts that are denied from replicating passwords. Administrators, server operators, backup writers, all the important high-level administrators in our enterprise, their passwords will not be stored out on this server at all. So at this point, I'm going to take these defaults. I have nothing in my demo system here to add in. So I'll go ahead and click Next. Now we get back to our regularly scheduled program where we can either install from media, or I can install from any domain controller, or I'll see that I have two to choose from. If I know that one of them is more available or maybe closer to me, I could select it. In this case, I will just take whatever domain controller it wants to give me and click Next. We have our database and log file and sysfiles folder location. I'll take the defaults. I only have one hard drive, so I'll click next. Here's a review, as well as the ability to look at the script for future automation. So I will click next. It goes through and checks all the prerequisites, where you'll see here that there is still a warning in place, but most importantly at the top here, green circle with a check mark in it saying they all passed successfully. The warning is not a problem. So I can click install. And at this point, again, just as we've seen with the other systems, this one will go even a little faster yet because we're not installing DNS and we're not replicating everything over. But I'm going to go ahead and speed things up and take us to the process being completed. Go ahead and pause and resume on your end if you're following along. All right, well, my system has completed the installation, has rebooted, logged back in as the Landon Hotel administrator now that I'm a domain controller. As expected, it was quite fast. It actually only took about a minute or two to go through the entire process. Again, remembering, in this case, I wasn't becoming a global catalog server, was not becoming a DNS server. So that already shrunk down the process to begin with. And then being a read-only domain controller with a very limited group of passwords that could be replicated, that's why the whole system installed a lot faster than other domain controllers typically would. And again, I'm only sharing that with you because on your end, you should also be experiencing similar timing as far as the installation goes. So anyway, we can see here that we are an Active Directory domain controller. We can see the roll down here in the tools menu. We can see that we have the tools. And in fact, if I were to open into one of them, I just want to show you in Active Directory users and computers, I just want to show you that even though I'm a read-only domain controller, I do have everything listed as though I was a fully functional domain controller. The only difference is I can't go in and make changes on this particular machine because the assumption is that this machine is going to be in an unsecure location where we don't want people who might have the ability to log on to be able to make changes to our Active Directory database. So when do you want to have a read-only domain controller? Well, you want to have it when you want to have a smaller footprint and there's no need for any local administration, and more specifically, if there's a security issue in the local location of the domain controller itself. That's when you would do read-only domain controllers.